What if I told you that the absolute best salespeople in the world uh, actually use the fewest closing techniques?
I mean, it completely shatters the whole stereotype, right?
Totally. And, getting a ton of objections isn't some sign that you're a great negotiator. It's actually a glaring red flag that you've already messed up.
Exactly. The whole fast-talking, always be closing image of persuasion is just so ingrained in our culture, but the actual data tells a completely different story.
Welcome to today's deep dive.
Oh,
We're talking about mastering the art of the major sale, or really just how to guide anyone toward a major decision.
right.
And our source code for this journey is Neil Rackham's foundational book, Smin Selling. And, this isn't just a collection of one guy's random opinions on how to pitch.
Oh, not at all. Rackham and his team spent 12 years analyzing over 35,000 actual sales calls.
Wow. 35,000.
Yeah, it's massive. They observed the behaviors, tracked the outcomes, and decoded what actually works. It's honestly one of the most rigorous research-backed studies of human persuasion ever conducted.
So our mission today is to arm you with a 20-minute masterclass on this SPI framework. We're going to break down the exact mandatory structure, which is 5 precise questions per stage.
The essential building blocks.
Exactly. We'll run through 2 mini role plays to see it in action and give you a 10-minute discovery checklist so you can stop pushing products and start uncovering real value.
Consider this your ultimate cheat code.
Seriously, because whether you are selling a multi-million-dollar software system or you're just trying to pitch a major new initiative to your boss, this methodology is going to completely flip your approach.
But to really grasp why this framework is so revolutionary, we first have to understand why the traditional advice we've all been taught is actually setting us up to fail.
Right, especially in high-stakes situations.
Exactly. And there is a story from the research that illustrates this perfectly. It's the O'Hare Airport meeting.
Oh, right, the O'Hare story.
Yeah, so Rackham meets with a VP of sales for a massive Fortune 100 company at O'Hare Airport. And this VP is just incredibly frustrated.
Because his team's numbers are down, right?
Way down. Their sales are 30% lower than they should be, and he has just poured a fortune into traditional sales training for them.
And he assumes he already knows what the problem is. He thinks his struggling reps just need to be more aggressive.
Right. He figures his top performers are simply better at using high-pressure closing techniques, or they're just rock stars at handling objections when the buyer pushes back.
Because that's the standard playbook. You assume persuasion is all about the push.
That is the assumption. But when Rackham's research team actually goes out into the field and observes these reps on live calls, the truth is genuinely shocking.
What did they find?
The highest performing salespeople in that exact company used significantly fewer closing techniques than the average reps.
Wow.
And even more surprising, they faced fewer objections from their buyers.
Which completely defies logic if you follow traditional sales advice.
Oh, and didn't the researchers also look at the types of questions they asked? Like, we've always been told to ask open-ended questions instead of closed-ended ones. They tracked that too. And they found that whether a seller used open-ended questions or closed-ended questions made absolutely zero measurable difference to their success rate.
That is wild. So if the traditional playbook, closing hard, handling objections, open-ended questions, if that was failing so badly, what was the missing variable?
It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of the environment. The researchers realized there is a massive psychological difference between a small sale and a large sale.
Okay, break that down for us.
In a small sale, say buying a $15 gadget or a cheap software subscription, the risk to the buyer is incredibly low. If they make a mistake, it's just a minor annoyance.
Right, it's a one-off transaction. They probably never have to see the seller again.
Exactly. So in that low-risk scenario, a pushy seller can lean in, close hard, and force a transaction, and it might actually work.
But a large sale's a totally different beast.
Completely different. You are asking the buyer to take on significant risk. If a corporate decision maker makes a bad public call on a massive million-dollar software integration, they aren't just out some money. They could literally lose their job.
And a large sale usually means you're entering into an ongoing relationship, right? The buyer has to work with you for months or even years.
Yes, exactly.
It makes total sense. I mean, it's like going on a bad first date.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you go on a first date and you are super pushy, talking a mile a minute, only hyping up how great you are and trying to force a commitment right then and there, you might, in some rare scenario, score a quick, superficial transaction.
Right.
But if your goal is a long-term, trusting relationship, That aggressive behavior absolutely ruins your chances. You just become repulsive.
That is a perfect analogy. What works in a small one-off sale actually becomes toxic in a large sale. Pushy tactics destroy trust.
So how do we fix it?
Rackham introduces what he calls the value equation. In any major decision, the customer's perception of the problem must outweigh the cost of the solution.
Okay.
Because if the problem feels small and your price tag is huge, they will never buy.
So just to do a quick mini recap here to make sure we're on track, what works in a small sale hurts you in a large sale. Success in major deals isn't about closing hard. It's about shifting to a discovery mindset to build the perceived value of the problem.
Spot on. You have to start pitching and start discovering.
But how do we actually do that without sounding like, a sleazy salesperson?
We shift our entire strategy to investigation. We start by establishing a baseline, which is where the SPIN acronym begins. The S stands for situation questions.
Situation questions. So what are we talking about here? Just asking them basic facts about their business?
Essentially, yes. You are collecting background data about the customer's current state, and there are 5 mandatory situation questions to know for this framework.
Okay, let's hear them.
Number 1, what equipment do you use now?
Makes sense.
Number 2, how old is this unit? Number 3, how many people do you employ here?
Just getting the lay of the land.
Right. Number 4, what's your position? And number 5, what's your annual sales volume?
I mean, I get the need for context, but honestly, if someone sat down in my office and fired those 5 questions at me in a row, I'd be looking at my watch. It sounds like a deposition.
And that is exactly the danger. Inexperienced sellers use situation questions way too much because they feel safe.
Safe how?
Well, you aren't challenging the buyer. You're just gathering facts. But from the buyer's perspective, having to educate a stranger on basic facts is incredibly boring and irritating.
Yeah, you're wasting their valuable time on things you probably could have just Googled.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Successful professionals do their homework beforehand so they can minimize situation questions and quickly transition to the P in SPIN, which stands for problem questions.
And this is where the real work begins, right? Problem questions.
Yes. This is where you probe for difficulties, dissatisfactions, and what Rackham calls implied needs.
Implied needs.
Right. Experienced people ask significantly more problem questions because they understand a core truth of business. If there is no problem, there is no basis for a sale.
So you are actively looking for trouble. What are the 5 problem questions we need to know?
Okay, number 1, is your existing machine hard to use?
Digging right in.
Number 2, are you satisfied with your present equipment? Number 3, do you have quality problems?
Beginning them to admit the friction.
Exactly. Number 4, what are the disadvantages of the way you're handling this now? And number 5, isn't it difficult to process peak loads?
Those are very direct. They're strategically designed to get the customer to articulate a raw underlying issue.
Yes, you want them to state an implied need.
I understand the logic, but I have to admit there's a lot of human friction here. Walking into someone's business and essentially asking, tell me what's broken and failing in your department, feels deeply intrusive.
It is deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people.
I can see why rookies might actively avoid doing this. They don't want to be rude.
Rookies avoid problem questions because they are terrified of offending the buyer or coming across as negative, but think about going to a doctor.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it. If I go to a doctor and they just immediately prescribe me a heavy surgery without ever asking where it hurts or how long I've had the pain, I'd walk right out of the clinic.
Right. The questioning isn't rude. It's the foundation of their expertise.
So let's do another mini recap. Situation questions gather necessary facts, but bore the buyer if overused. And problem questions uncover the buyer's raw implied needs, which is the essential starting point.
Exactly. However, the research revealed a massive caveat here. Uncovering these raw problems, these implied needs, works wonderfully in small sales. But in large, complex sales, simply finding a problem is shockingly insufficient.
Because of that value equation we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm a corporate buyer and you help me realize that our current software has a minor glitch, that's great. We found a problem. But if your solution costs $100,000, that minor headache does not justify the massive price tag. I'm not blowing my budget on a small annoyance.
Exactly. The scale is completely unbalanced. So once you find the problem, you have to build it up. You have to make the problem bigger, heavier, and more urgent.
And that brings us to the I in SPIN, which is implication questions.
The heavy hitters. These are the most powerful questions in the framework. Implication questions explore the effects, the ripple consequences of the problem you just uncovered.
They are the true language of decision makers.
Right. They take a seemingly isolated, small problem and expand it until it tips the value equation, making the cost of the problem look far more expensive than the cost of your solution.
Okay, give us the 5 mandatory implication questions to keep in our back pocket.
Number 1, what effect does that have on output? Number 2, could that lead to increased costs?
Oh, tying it directly to the bottom line.
Always. Number 3, will it slow down your proposed expansion? Number 4, doesn't that create work bottlenecks? And number 5, what does this turnover mean in terms of training cost?
To really see the psychology of this in action, let's look at one of the mini role plays from the source material.
Yes, let's do the contortement machine example.
Right. Imagine a seller trying to pitch a new industrial machine called a contortomat, and it costs a whopping $120,000.
So let's run the bad version first. The inexperienced seller uses a problem question and uncovers a minor implied need. They ask, is your current machine hard to use?
And as the buyer, I say, yeah, it's a bit hard to use, but we manage.
And the seller, excited that they found a problem, immediately pitches. Well, we can solve that ease of use issue with our new contortomat system for just $120,000.
And as the buyer, I am instantly outraged. I'm thinking $120K just to make a machine slightly easier for my team to use? You must be out of your mind. We'll just deal with the clunky machine.
The seller pitched way too early. The perceived problem is tiny and the cost is massive. Now let's look at the good version, the master level approach. The seller uncovers that exact same small problem the machine is hard to use. But instead of jumping in with a pitch, they bite their tongue.
They hold back.
Yes, and they use implication questions instead.
Right. They start exploring the ripple effects. They ask, if the machine is hard to use, what effect does that have on your daily output?
The buyer stops and thinks, well, it slows us down. Actually, it creates work bottlenecks.
And then the seller asks, could those bottlenecks lead to increased costs?
The buyer realizes, yes, we are paying overtime to compensate.
The seller keeps going. Will this slow down your proposed expansion for next quarter?
Now that you mention it, we can't expand if we are bottlenecked.
And finally, the seller asks, does the difficulty of the machine cause operator turnover? And what does that turnover mean in terms of training cost?
Wow.
Right. Okay, putting my buyer hat back on, the psychological shift here is staggering. 2 minutes ago, I thought I just had a slightly annoying machine. Now, because of those implication questions, I'm realizing that this ease of use issue is destroying my daily output, driving up overtime costs, stalling my company's expansion, and costing me tens of thousands of dollars in constant training for new operators who just quit out of frustration.
Suddenly, a $120,000 solution doesn't look like an expense at all.
No, it looks like a massive bargain to stop the bleeding.
The problem grew heavy. You didn't tell the buyer their business was bleeding. You asked the right questions, so they discovered the bleeding themselves.
Let's do a quick recap. Uncovering a problem isn't enough. Implication questions expand the problem's consequences until the buyer feels the true, heavy cost of inaction.
Exactly.
But wait, this reminds me how Socrates used to debate. He would just ask questions until the other person realized the devastating flaws in their own logic.
That's a great comparison.
It's incredibly effective, but I have a real concern here. Aren't we just depressing the buyer? We are sitting in their office, systematically making their professional life look like an absolute, inescapable disaster.
It is a very valid concern, and it's something Rackham's team analyzed closely. Implication questions are inherently negative. They drag the buyer down into the mud of their own consequences.
Yeah, and if you just leave them there, they'll feel overwhelmed and fatalistic.
So if we've successfully made the problem massive and heavy, how do we pivot the energy in the room? We need them to feel empowered and excited to buy, not completely defeated.
Right.
This is where we introduce the final piece of the sequence, the N in Spin-On. Need-payoff questions. And to your point about depressing the buyer, the research team actually had an internal name for this dynamic.
Oh, right.
They called it Quincy's Rule.
Quincy's Rule?
Yes, named after the 8-year-old son of one of the researchers. The team was in a room, arguing over transcripts, trying to categorize these complex psychological questions. The 8-year-old looks at the whiteboard and says, it's easy. Implication questions are always sad, but need-payoff questions are always happy.
I love that. Out of the mouths of babes. It really is that simple. So, need-payoff questions are the happy pivot.
Exactly. They focus the customer's attention squarely on the solution rather than the problem. Let me give you the 5 mandatory need payoff questions.
Go for it.
Number 1, how would that help? Number 2, what benefits do you see?
Turning it around on them.
Right. Number 3, why is it important to solve this problem? Number 4, would it be useful to speed this operation by 10%? And number 5, is there any other way this could help you?
Notice how the true magic of a need payoff question is that it gets the customer to tell you the benefits.
Yes, you aren't forcing the idea onto them.
It's like the movie Inception. Your goal isn't to forcefully plant your idea into their head. You are guiding them with targeted questions so they actually pitch the brilliant idea to themselves.
That is exactly what happens. By asking these happy questions, you completely bypass the natural resistance to being sold to. You aren't forcing your product's features down their throat. You are getting them to rehearse the benefits out loud.
Which is critical because that buyer usually has to take your proposal and sell it internally to a board or a purchasing committee.
You are literally training them on how to pitch your solution to their own bosses.
Time for a mini recap. Need payoff questions. Pivot the conversation from sad problems to happy solutions, transforming implied needs into explicit needs by having the buyer articulate the benefits.
Perfectly said. But there is a huge danger here. What if you use a need payoff question too early, before the problem is really heavy?
Or worse, what if I ask, how would a fully remote cloud system help you? And my software doesn't actually have a cloud feature.
Then you have just dug your own grave. If you ask a need payoff question about a capability you do not possess, you are successfully building up an intense desire for a feature your competitor has.
You just did your rival's job for them.
Exactly. You must only ask need payoff questions that lead directly to the strengths of your specific solution.
So we've navigated the whole journey, SPIN, but knowing the sequence intellectually and actually executing it in a high-pressure meeting are two very different things.
Oh, absolutely.
How do we practice this so we don't just panic and fall back into our old pushy habits?
To understand how to practice this, we have to look at the biggest symptom of doing it wrong, which is objections.
Okay.
Traditional corporate training treats objection handling as this vital macho skill. But Rackham's research proves that offering what he calls advantages, which is when a seller excitedly shows how a product can be used before they have fully developed the buyer's need, directly causes objections.
Let's bring in our second role play to see this dynamic, the word processor example.
Right. Let's look at the bad version first, how the average seller operates. The seller hears a minor implied need. The buyer says, we get way too many typos in our documents with our current setup.
And as a seller, my eyes light up. I hear a problem I can solve. So I immediately jump in with an advantage. I say, well, our new automated word processor cuts error rates by 20%.
Right.
But as a buyer, I haven't really felt the pain of those typos yet. You're offering a massive IT overhaul for a tiny problem. So I immediately raise an objection. Listen, it is absolutely not worth the hassle and downtime of installing a whole new system just to fix a few minor typos.
Boom. A painful objection created entirely by the seller pitching too early. It's human nature to want to jump in and solve a problem the second you hear it.
But let's look at the good version. What happens when a master uses the specimen framework?
The seller hears the typo problem, but they fight the urge to pitch. They bite their tongue and use implication questions instead.
They ask, do these constant mistakes cause bottlenecks in your publishing schedule? Does constantly having to retype these documents hurt your team's daily motivation?
The buyer nods and says, yes, actually motivation is terrible right now and we are missing crucial client deadlines because of the editing backlog.
The problem is now heavy.
Exactly. So the seller introduces the happy need payoff question. If we could significantly reduce that proofreading time, how would that help your staff's overall productivity?
And the buyer's eyes light up.
Right.
We could finally focus on acquiring new clients. We absolutely need a system to automate this.
And here's the craziest part. The seller hasn't even mentioned a single feature of their product yet.
Right? They haven't talked about error rates or software specs or pricing.
And notice what else was completely missing from that exchange.
There was no objection. The buyer never pushed back.
Exactly.
This is a massive realization. Objection handling, which companies spend literally millions of dollars teaching their reps, is essentially just a Band-Aid for terrible needs development. If you do ISPIN right, the objections never even exist.
That is the profound truth at the heart of this research. Objection prevention is infinitely superior to objection handling.
So to our final recap, pitching features too early creates objections. But how do we prepare to prevent them?
To ensure you naturally follow the framework, Rackham provides a 10-minute discovery checklist. You should use this before every big meeting.
Okay, I love a practical tool. How do I actually prepare for this? Do I just try to memorize the list of questions?
No, you map the conversation backward. Step 1, write down at least 3 potential problems you believe the buyer has that your specific product can actually solve.
Okay, I have my 3 problems.
Step 2, for each of those problems, write down actual problem questions you can ask to organically uncover them in the conversation.
Getting them to admit the raw pain. Got it.
Exactly. Step 3, map out the implications. Ask yourself, what hidden difficulties or financial consequences do those specific problems lead to in their wider business?
Identifying the ripple effects.
And finally, step 4, draft the specific implication questions you will use to make the buyer realize the heavy weight of those ripple effects.
If I spend just 10 minutes doing that before we walk into a room, I don't have to wing it.
Right. You have a structured path that naturally steers the conversation through the disposition sequence.
I'll stop desperately pitching features, I'll uncover massive value, and I'll completely bypass the need to handle objections.
It is a remarkably consistent and reliable framework once you commit to the preparation.
Let's take a step back and look at the journey we've been on today. We started by completely breaking down the myth of the aggressive, fast-talking closer.
We saw the data proving that treating a high-stakes relationship like a transactional small-sale hustle is actually toxic to your success.
We decoded the psychology behind the SPIN framework with the 5 exact questions for each stage, using situation questions just enough to gain context, digging in with problem questions to find the raw pain, leveraging implication questions to make the cost of that pain unbearable.
And finally, using need-payoff questions to pivot the buyer toward a happy solution.
We proved its power with the 2 role plays, showing how pitching too early literally creates the very objections we are so afraid of. And we armed you with a 10-minute discovery checklist to prep for your next big meeting.
And remember, while this research was born in the world of massive corporate sales, the underlying psychology applies to human persuasion universally.
Exactly. These tools aren't just for salespeople. They're for anyone who needs to build value and guide someone to a major decision without alienating them.
Very true.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Socrates was famous for using implication questions to make people realize the true weight of their beliefs.
Right.
Think about your own life. How might you use the SPIN framework not just in business, but in your next major personal negotiation?
Oh, that's fascinating. Like what?
Like imagine you are trying to buy a house and dealing with a stubborn seller who won't lower their price. Or maybe you were trying to convince your reluctant partner that it is finally time to adopt a dog.
Oh, yes.
Instead of just pitching the benefits, think about the implication questions you could ask to make the status quo feel unbearable. What questions would you use? Let us know your strategy in the comments. We absolutely love seeing how you take these frameworks and apply them to the real world. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.